Hello guys, my previous video on how to conquer MCQs has crossed 50,000 views and a lot of you guys have resonated to it as well. Thank you so much for this overwhelming response. And since a lot of you have been asking to make more such videos on MCQ solving, here is a part 2 of how to conquer MCQs. And in this video, I'm gonna share with you 6 more types of MCQs, but this time it's gonna be INI CET pattern. So buckle up your seatbelts and get ready because the MCQs in this video are gonna be of a higher level and they're gonna be a bit difficult. So I want you to pay really close attention because these are the kind of questions which are gonna appear in your upcoming INI CET exam. So here we go. Take a look at this question. Arrange the following steps of inguinal hernia repair. That is Lichtenstein mesh herniaplasty. So he has given you 4 steps. That is mesh placement, identification of inguinal ligament, opening of external oblique, and closure of wound. So when you see these kind of questions, it's not really necessary that you have studied the topic, right? If you have attended the OT posting and you have assisted your senior or carefully observed the procedure of Lichtenstein mesh herniaplasty, you will be able to answer this question, right? Or there is another option where you have not attended the clinical posting, you have not seen a case of inguinal hernia, but you have read the steps and you remember the steps. Even then you can answer this kind of question. So, or if you have forgotten both of them, you didn't pay attention during your clinics or you couldn't remember the exact steps, but you can still apply your basics, right? Now, closure of the wound would be the last step. So you need to look at the option where D is the last. So in the given options, there are two options which has D in it, right? And mesh placement cannot be the first step. So one option is out of the question. So the correct answer is option C. That is, first you'll open the external oblique, then you'll identify the inguinal ligament, then you place the mesh and then close the wound. So let's have another example. Arrange the following stages of wound healing in correct order. So he has given you 4 options: proliferation, inflammation, remodeling, and hemostasis. Now this is more of a memory based question, but if you still forget, you can still apply your concept that remodeling would be the last stage, right? And hemostasis would be the first. So you need to look at the option where hemostasis, that is D, is in first option and C is at the last option. So if you're stuck, this is what I want you to do. You need to apply the simple trick. You need to look at the first and the last step. So in this question, D has to be the first step and C has to be the last step. Look at the options. If you are lucky enough, there will be only one option with this sequence, just like in this question. So the correct option is option D. First is hemostasis, then inflammation, then proliferation, then remodeling. Or to confuse you, he may keep the first and last step same in 2 options. Then you need to apply your photographic memory or your knowledge to solve this kind of questions. That's your first type of question, that is sequential arrangement, where you can either solve it by using your memory or your concept. And when you're stuck, remember to find the first and last option of the sequence and check if you're lucky. Check if that option is available in the given MCQ. So now take a look at the second question, and second type of questions are the favorite types of INI CET examiners, that is multiple correct type. So let's take a look at this question. Which of the following vaccines are live attenuated? MMR, polio sac vaccine, polio sabin vaccine, or rabies? Now this is an entirely your recall based question or memory based question. If you really have revised the table on vaccine, this question is really easy for you. What if you have forgotten to revise the vaccine table, just like me? I had studied about vaccines 5 years back when I was preparing for my NEET PG 2020. So how will I approach this question? I don't have an idea about which is which, right? Now, when you come across this kind of question in your exam where you have immediately not studied or immediately not revised, first of all, relax your mind, calm down. You might have studied it sometime or the other, right? You might have looked at the table, or you might have heard to a lecture, or you might have even made notes, or you might have made some mnemonic or a trick to remember which of them were live, which of them were killed vaccines. So during that time, I want you to go through your mind, go through all the things you had done during studying. Did you make a mnemonic for that? Did you apply some kind of trick to remember it? Or did you pay really close attention during listening to the lecture? So you'll have one or the other thing which will help you to solve these kind of questions. And when I saw this question, it suddenly hit to my mind that while making notes, I remember a trick, or I remember circling that K, and that K stands for killed vaccine. So now I know that option B, that is Salk vaccine, is a killed vaccine. So whichever option contains B, I can eliminate it easily. So option A, option D, and option C out of the question, and I can confidently mark option C, that is A and C, even though I don't know if MMR is live, attenuated, or killed, because I know for the fact that SARC vaccine is a killed vaccine, right? And there are three options where B is mentioned, so I know that's wrong. So that's how I can confidently go and mark option B. And now let me explain how important is it to make your own notes or to write the things whatever you feel is important, because just by reading you remember 10% of whatever you have studied. By listening you remember 20%, and by writing or by discussion you remember 70% of whatever you have studied, and by doing you remember 90% of it. So in internship, if you have done a procedure, if you have done a suturing, if you get a question on suture, you can never forget your first suturing, right? If he asks you what is this kind of suture and he gives you a simple suture and you remember you have done it, so you immediately go and mark this is a simple suture. And when you write something you retain it for a long time, because during the exam when you are calm enough, when you have relaxed your mind, immediately come to your mind, yes, I had written this statement somewhere in my notes, I had encircled this, or I had highlighted this, or I had made a box and written this word in that box. So remember, that's going to help you the most, and that's going to give you the edge over the others and help you solve the MCQ. So just like that how circling that K 5 years back helped me solve that MCQ on vaccine. Remember, prioritize making your own notes first, but if you really cannot, then try to make at least a concise notes of the important points which you think you can forget, or try at least discussing it with your friends, help you retain it better. So I was lucky enough, the B was in three options, but what if there were two options? When suppose for example option A was C and D instead of A and C, so now I'm stuck. Now I don't have any trick to differentiate to find out which of the two, that is MMR or rabies, is a live attenuated vaccine. So I have to skip this question. So that's when you'll regret, काश वो vaccine वाला table revise कर लिया होता before entering the INI CET. And in this stress, with that regret, with that frustration, when you move on to the next question, you're easily bound to get the next question wrong, because the next question you got was a true or false type of question, where you need to reason in your brain whether the given statement is true or false, and with the frustration and stress of the previous question you are not able to concentrate. So that's why I had told you to practice all types of MCQs, keep analyze what question are you getting first. So if you are not able to remember something, it's okay, skip that question first, you can always come back to it later, but don't get stuck in that question key. I wish I had just revised the table, or I wish I had just read it once again. So let's take a look at the third question and talk more about it, right? Now the third type of questions are true or false type of questions. These are the really tricky ones, because until and unless you have read the topic, you cannot guess if it's true or false, right? But still I'll tell you a trick to solve this. So let's see a question. Which of the following statements are true? First is Crohn's disease always involves rectum. Second statement, basal cell carcinoma rarely metastasizes. All murmurs increase on respiration, and laparoscopic cholecystectomy is never done in gallbladder empyema. So which of these are true? Is it A and B? Is it A and C? Is it only B, or all are true? So by reading the statements you may feel, yeah, everything seems true for me. And you can answer this kind of question only if you have read Crohn's disease, only if you have read basal cell carcinoma in depth. I mean in depth, not just superficially. You have revised, and if you really understood the concept of Crohn's disease, if you have read the pathophysiology, if you have read it from the start, only then you can answer this kind of question whether Crohn's disease involves the rectum or not. But if you are not studied, if you have forgotten the concept, let me tell you a trick to attempt these kind of questions, right? So look for the all or none type of statements. Okay, all of the following, or none of the following, or it's never. When you see these kind of questions, pay attention to those, because most of the times those are the kind of statements which are going to be wrong. So if there are no such statements, then you need to skip this question. You can't take risk. But if there are, like for example, there are, look at the third statement, all murmurs increase on inspiration. Sounds doubtful, right? Not all murmurs increase on inspiration. So the third statement is false. Option C is false, because all murmurs don't increase on inspiration. Even though you don't know which type increase, which type decrease, but in your mind you know that all mamas don't. So C is false. So let's eliminate which contains C. So option B is out of the equation now. Now let's see if we have this words again. So fourth statement has it. Never done. Lap chole is never done in gallbladder empyema. It's done. So even option D is false. So you have eliminated two options. Like, but when you see option A, it also has always. Choose it as false, and only the right statement is option B. That is, basal cell carcinoma rarely metastasizes. It's true. The basal cell carcinoma doesn't metastasize. So by applying this logic, you got this MCQ right, which most of the times it happens right, but in rare occasions you can get this wrong. Apply this all or none type of trick only as the last resort. Only if you have not familiar with the concept or not thorough with the concept, try to analyze the statement first. If you read the topic and know the concept, it's really better. You can directly answer the question. But if you have not read the topic or if you have forgotten the topic, this is the only trick which can help you solve this kind of MCQs. And if you are doubtful, then you need to skip this question, my friend. You can't afford to take risks. So these are your third types, this true or false type of questions. So now the fourth type of questions are assertion and reasoning type of question. And these questions will really take a toll on your brain during INI CET exams, because there are two statements. First, he wants you to find out whether both the statements are true or false. And then he wants you to associate both of them, whether the reason is the correct option for the given statement. So it's a higher level question where your memory, where your concept, where your clinical knowledge, everything will be tested at once. So you need to be thorough with all the 6 types of questions which I had discussed in part 1 before even trying to attempt this difficult INI-CET type of questions. Because when you see this kind of question in the exam, see, vitamin K deficiency causes prolonged PT, and the reason for it is vitamin K is needed for synthesis of clotting factors of 2, 7, 9 and 10. So are both the statements true? And does the reason correctly explain the statement? Now look at the options. Are both the statements true and reason explains it correctly? Are both the statements true but reason doesn't explain it correctly? Assertion true, reason false, or both false? So now you need the concept of vitamin K and its mechanism of action if you want to really answer this question. So if you have listened to the lecture or if you have read the notes, that vitamin K is needed for the synthesis of clotting factors 2, 7, 9 and 10, and if there is deficiency of factor 2, 7, 9 and 10, there is prolonged PT. So here both the statements are true, and yes, reason explains the statement correctly. Let's take a look at another question. Gastric ulcer pain increases after food, and the reason is HCl secretion increases after food. So in this kind of questions, I wanted to take a look at assertion and reason as a separate sentence before you associate them. So gastric ulcer pain increases after food. Is it true? Yes, it's true. And the reason, HCl secretion increases after food. Does HCl secretion increase after food? Yes, it's also true. But does it explain the pain? Why is gastric ulcer painful? So if the reason answers your why, only then it's true. See, gastric ulcer pain increases after food. Why? Because the HCl secretion increases after food. So both the statements are true, and reason is the correct explanation for the statement. Another example. Carbon monoxide poisoning causes cherry red skin. Carbon monoxide binds to myoglobin only. Now, at first look, you may seem, yes, both the options are right, and yes, carbon monoxide causes cherry red skin and carbon monoxide binds to myoglobin. It does. But does it explain the reason for cherry red coloration of skin? So you may seem, yes, it might. Maybe the cherry red skin is due to the myoglobin binding, and you may mark the option as first. Both are true and reason is the correct option, but you're missing an important concept here. Look at the statement he's given you in reason. Carbon monoxide binds to myoglobin only. You miss this crucial word, that only, because carbon monoxide doesn't bind to myoglobin only, it binds to hemoglobin as well. So the reason is false. So even though you don't know the concept or why that skin color is cherry red, if you had looked at that word only, you would have known that reason is wrong and the correct answer is option C, that is assertion is true and the reason is false. So this is how the examiner is gonna trick you in your upcoming INI CET exam. There'll be a subtle clue, very subtle clue, which he wants you to find. So he wants to know whether you're really present in the exam, whether you're really attentive, whether you are focusing. He really wants to check whether you have that skill of answering such kind of MCQs. And if you have really read the concept well, if you really know the concept well of carbon monoxide poisoning, then you know that cherry red skin is due to carboxyhemoglobin, that is When carbon monoxide binds to hemoglobin, irreversibly it forms a compound called as carboxyhemoglobin, which is the reason for the cherry red discoloration of the skin. But if you had not known that concept, just by looking at that word only should have brought that, curiosity in your brain, that only, does it bind to myoglobin only? It binds to hemoglobin as well, right? Yes, this statement is wrong, and I'm gonna straight away mark option C. So now it's not necessary for you to ask why the cherry red colored skin, how it happened. The statement is wrong, you straight away mark option C. Done with it. So your approach to the question is what really gonna decide your rank, and not just your knowledge. Your focus, your approach, and the way you have practiced the approach to MCQs is what gonna decide your rank, and not just your knowledge. Remember, it doesn't matter if you have revised 10 times, it doesn't matter you have made your own handwritten notes, but if you're not calm and if you're not focused during the exam, you're gonna miss these simple, these subtle kind of clues and get those MCQs wrong. And during the recall, you may feel, yes, I had answered it right, but there is marks discrepancy because you didn't even realize there was that only word in the heat of the moment, in the stress of the exam. So these were your four type of question, that is assertion and reasoning type. Now coming to the fifth type of question, that is match the following types. So these question will test your basic knowledge. First, match the easiest one, whichever you know. If you know that vitamin B12 causes megaloblastic anemia, then check for the option which has 3C in it. So that is option A and B, and then try to find the correct answer by looking at that options. 1A, is it right? Vitamin B1 causes pellagra. No, vitamin B1 doesn't cause pellagra, it causes beriberi, right? So the right option here is option B, that is 1B. Vitamin B1 causes beriberi, B3 causes pellagra, and B12 causes megaloblastic anemia. So these are relatively simple kind of questions where you need to apply your basic knowledge, and first go for the easiest one, then check if that option is available in the given options, and then try to match from the options you have selected. Now coming to the most difficult kind of questions, which are combination types, where the examiner is going to combine 3 to 4 kinds of simple MCQs and make it into one grand MCQ and test your in-depth knowledge. So in part 1 I had discussed with you the 6 types of MCQs, right? So the examiner can make a combination of 2 to 3 types of those and give a question like this. The histological picture of a 60-year-old female with thyroid swelling is given below. Which of the following is a characteristic feature of the given condition? The first thing you need to do is to identify the histopathology slide and make a diagnosis. So if the question was the histopathological picture is given, what is the most probable diagnosis, then this would have been the type 6 question, that is image type question. But here the examiner has increased the difficulty level. He has not asked you the diagnosis, he has asked you to identify the feature of the condition. So when you look at the image, you can see there is a pinkish amyloid deposit in the thyroid gland, right? And in which condition do you see amyloid deposit? You see that in medullary carcinoma of thyroid. And he wants to know what is the most characteristic feature of a medullary carcinoma of thyroid. So let's look at the options here. It originates from follicular cells of the thyroid. It is primarily associated with high level of TSH. It arises from parafollicular C cells of the thyroid gland and is characterized by calcitonin production. Or it is less common than papillary thyroid cancer and lacks neuroendocrine feature. So if you don't know the concept of medullary carcinoma of thyroid, even though you may be able to diagnose the condition by looking at the image, but you will not be able to answer the part 2 of the question. So this was a two-step base, right? You first need to identify the image, make a diagnosis, then tell the examiner whether you know the characteristic feature of medullary carcinoma of thyroid. So these kind of questions are what tests your conceptual knowledge. If you have gone through it superficially, you can never answer these kind of questions. So take a look at option D. It's less common than papillary thyroid cancer and lacks neuroendocrine feature. The first half is correct. It's less common than papillary thyroid cancer because papillary thyroid cancer is the most common type, right? But the second part, that is, it lacks neuroendocrine feature, is a false option. So you have ruled out option D. What about option A? It originates from follicular cells. No, if it's originating from follicular cells, it's follicular carcinoma. It can't be medullary. So option A is also wrong. So now you're confused between option B and option C. Is it associated with high level of TSH, or does it arise from parafollicular C cells and is characterized by calcitonin? If you have read medullary carcinoma of thyroid during your preparation time, you will immediately recognize option C. Okay, it arises from parafollicular cells. Yes, I think I have read this somewhere. I think I remember listening to this lecture that medullary carcinoma arises from parafollicular C cells. Yes, let me mark option C, and you will be right. if you have gone through some notes rapidly, that you medullary carcinoma is arise from peripheral cysts, but what if you were not able to diagnose the histopathology image? You know the feature of medullary carcinoma of thyroid, but you don't know how the biopsy of medullary carcinoma looks like. You don't know how the amyloid looks like. It's really important to learn a topic from start to end. You never know what kind of question the examiner may ask, what detail the examiner may pick at. So a lot of students ask, sir, is so just going to rapid revision videos, or is just BTR, is just doing BTR enough? It may be enough, but you may never be able to solve these kind of questions if you just revise the important points, because in BTR and RR the concepts are not covered. Only the highlights of the concepts are covered, that one liners or important most previously asked questions, and not these kind of questions. This is just an example. The examiner may ask any kind of question. In part 1 I had discussed with you the 6 kind of MCQs, right? So the examiner can make a combination of 2 to 3 kinds of MCQ and give you a difficult MCQ. Like in this, it was a image based plus your concept testing, or he can even add a clinical scenario in it and ask you which of the following is false. So if that was a scenario, that it would have been a mixture of 4, that is trap question, a image based question, a clinical question, and all of the following except, that is elimination type of question. So there's no limit for an examiner's imagination. So you need to be prepared for anything. In order to do that, you have to be thorough with the concepts. So prioritize main videos or lecture videos or main notes for your preparation. Since NEET 20, you have almost 8 to 10 months to prepare for NEET PG 2026. I suggest you prioritize learning on concepts and not just going through BTR or RR just for the sake of completion and just for that sake of pseudo confidence. You see what happens, you complete that once, you complete BTR once or you complete RR once, and you have this kind of confidence. Yes, I have completed all 19 subjects, I can now get a good rank. But what happens in exams, you come across these kind of questions, these kind of true or false kind of questions, or multiple level integration questions, and you get confused and you start blaming ki this was not even thought for us, this was not covered in BTR, or this was not covered in RR. So just my final words, you need to prioritize learning concepts, and if you have time, you need to focus more on main videos and main notes, and use RR or BTR as a last resort, as a last minute revision with. And so that's it for today's video. I hope you guys really had some good insights about the INI CET type of MCQs, and please share this video to your friend who's also preparing for the upcoming exam if you think the video will help him as well. So, and don't forget to subscribe, because the next video is going to be on approach to GT. Like now you know all the 12 kinds of questions, right? Now the final exam is going to be a mixture of all these kind of questions. You need to practice that mindset. You need to keep your brain at its highest focus for 210 minutes, and if you lose your focus after 30 minutes, then you won't get your desired rank. So in my next video, that is approach to GT, I'll tell you when to give a GT, how frequently you should attempt them, and how to analyze after you give a GT, and the tips and tricks to increase your GT every time and make you exam ready. Because solving MCQs by sitting at your home or by sitting at a comfortable place will might seem easier, but once you enter the exam hall, there will be entire silence, and the only annoying thing you'll be hearing is the mouse click. Hundreds of students around you will be clicking at mouse click. That's gonna irritate you so much that you'll lose focus. So I'll teach you how to focus, how to calm down, and how to approach each question during your GT. So keep watching for more interesting videos.